It was November 23, 2018 in Polk County, Florida. At 8:48 p.m., 911 dispatchers get a call from an old woman. The caller was identified as 67-year-old Loretta Pickard from Polk County, Florida. In her house, a fire broke out. Initial reports suggest that the fire started in her kitchen and spread to the rest of her house. Loretta had mobility challenges and was dependent on a walker to move, making her vulnerable to emergency situations. When the fire got worse, she immediately called 911, which became a centerpiece of the tragedy.
Okay, tell me exactly what happened.
I think my house is on fire, and I'm here alone, and I'm on a walker.
Okay. All right, I have a couple more. I just have a couple of questions, okay?
Okay.
All right, just to help the firefighters, excuse me.
The call lasted 20 minutes. Loretta started off the call calm, which already is something so brave of a woman of her age and in her situation to do. But as the call gradually went, she sounded desperate, begging for help and terrified. She was helpless as she couldn't run to safety. "Are they here yet?" asked Loretta, until the call cut at the 20-minute mark, where you hear nothing but the smoke engulfing the whole house.
Okay, you're still on a dining room chair?
Yes,
Okay,
but it's getting really hot in here.
okay.
This case was not just another house fire tragedy. It was a case of a lot of controversy surrounding the whole entire tragedy. First of all, we have to deep dive into how the 911 dispatchers and the fire department responded to the poor woman's request. It's good to keep in mind that the call lasted 20 minutes, and when Loretta was on call with the 911 dispatcher, the firefighters had already arrived at the scene but had not gone inside to save Loretta Pickard. That's where Captain William James comes into the picture. The incident came into much more scrutiny when Captain William James showed unprofessional behavior during such a tragic scene. He was seen recording videos of the fire on his cell phone rather than coordinating rescue efforts. He later claimed that he was recording it for quote-unquote training purposes. This behavior was widely criticized as unprofessional and indicative of a lack of urgency. The aftermath was terrible. Loretta's body was found inside the house after the fire was extinguished. The official cause of death was determined to be smoke inhalation. Many believed her death was preventable had the firefighters acted more decisively. Post this incident, for obvious reasons, the Polk County Fire Department faced intense criticism for the Loretta Pickard case due to their delayed actions, protocol violations, and unprofessional behavior by Captain James. An internal investigation was launched on him which found that he had violated multiple department policies, and his decision-making and lack of urgency contributed to this terrible tragedy. Williams ultimately resigned from his position amidst the fallout, though no criminal charges were filed against him. For obvious reasons, Loretta's family was furious with the fire department's negligence. They publicly called for reforms in emergency response protocols to ensure such tragedies would not happen again. The tragic death of Loretta Pickard serves as a sobering reminder of the consequences of poor decision-making in emergency situations. While her family continues to mourn her loss, her story has sparked conversations about reforming fire department protocols, improving training, and ensuring accountability for first responders. Her name remains synonymous with a call for change in how emergency services prioritize and handle rescue operations, particularly for vulnerable individuals. On July 22, 2008, 911 dispatchers in Denver, Pennsylvania, receive a call from someone who goes by the name of Michael Roseborough, a respected funeral home director. Michael finds his wife, Jan Roseborough, unresponsive, inside their backyard swimming pool.
Lancaster County 911.
My wife just drowned.
I'm sorry?
I believe my wife just drowned.
Okay. And what happened?
I had gone to bed about an hour and a half ago, and she was outside, and I came out, and I saw the lights were still on the pool. But
The 911 dispatcher helps Michael to go through the steps to perform CPR. Michael tries his best to revive his wife by performing CPR, but sadly it was too late. Jan Roseborough was the mother to their 4 kids, and this tragedy was something that will linger in their minds until we come across on what really happened on the night of July 22, 2008. Jan Roseborough didn't die from drowning. She was in fact killed by her own husband, the caller of the infamous 911 call. The 911 dispatchers didn't know that Jan Roseborough's killer was directly speaking to them. Jan did not die from drowning. She died from manual strangulation. She was found with bruise marks in her neck and head. At around 10 p.m., neighbors of the Roseborough family heard unusual noises, which some suggest was the exact time Michael killed his wife. The forensic reports show that Jan died from the bruises and strangulation and was already dead prior to her body being placed inside the pool. Michael, knowing the injuries would arouse suspicion, placed her lifeless body into the pool in an attempt to make the death appear accidental. And eerily enough, it all starts to make sense when you listen to his calm demeanor in the 911 call.
What we're going to do is we're going to start the CPR, okay? Okay. Keep her head tilted back, pinch her nose closed, cover her mouth with yours, and give her 2 deep, regular breaths, about 1 second each.
Okay.
You got the siren for the fire department there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nobody will sound so calm seeing their wife's lifeless body inside the pool. That was one point of the investigation which raised serious questions and suspicions on Michael Roseborough. But what made Michael commit such a crime? There is a deeper motive behind this murder. Michael was having an affair with a woman named Angela Funk, a married woman who lived nearby. The relationship had been ongoing for months, with the two exchanging hundreds of phone calls, text messages, and emails. Angela later admitted that Michael had promised to leave Jan so they could start a new life together. The discovery of the affair painted a clear picture for prosecutors. Jan's murder wasn't a spontaneous act, it was premeditated. Michael saw Jan as an obstacle to his happiness with Angela and chose the most violent and irreversible means of removing her from his life. The 911 call became a centerpiece of the trial. Played repeatedly for the jury, it showcased Michael's frantic yet oddly dispassionate tone. Prosecutors argued that his demeanor was rehearsed, part of an elaborate effort to stage the scene and feign innocence. The call, instead of exonerating him, highlighted his calculated nature and further cemented his guilt. Michael Roseborough was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. During the trial, Angela Funk testified about their affair and Michael's promises to her. The prosecution's case was bolstered by the forensic evidence, inconsistencies in Michael's story, and the damning implications of the affair. In 2009, he was convicted and sentenced to life in prison without parole. The case left an indelible mark on the community, turning what seemed like an ordinary suburban family into the center of a harrowing crime story. The 911 call, now infamous, remains a chilling reminder of how a desperate attempt to cover up a crime can unravel under scrutiny. On the quiet afternoon of February 16, 2009, in Stamford, Connecticut, a tranquil suburban home became the site of an unthinkable horror. A woman named Charla Nash was being attacked in her home, but what was strange was, this time it wasn't a human attacking her. Sandra Harold, a woman who had spent years raising a chimpanzee named Travis as part of her family, made a frantic 911 call. Her words painted a vivid and horrifying picture. Her beloved chimpanzee, Travis, who had lived with her for 14 years, was now attacking her close friend, Charla Nash, in a violent, uncontrollable rage. Her voice, trembling with terror, conveyed a nightmare unfolding in real time. It started as an ordinary day. Charla Nash, a trusted friend, had come to Sandra's home to help with Travis. It's believed that Charla's new hairstyle or clothing might have startled Travis, triggering an instinctual and violent reaction. In an instant, the 200-pound chimp launched himself at Charla. His immense strength and razor-sharp teeth turned the encounter into a brutal assault. He tore at her face, destroying her eyes, nose, and lips. Her hands were shredded as she tried to shield herself. Sandra could only watch in horror as the attack unfolded. In a desperate bid to stop Travis, Sandra used a shovel and even stabbed him with a knife, but nothing worked. The chimp was relentless. The dispatcher, struggling to make sense of the chaos, asked questions to determine the severity of the situation. Sandra's repeated pleas for a gun reflected her understanding of the danger Travis posed, even as his caretaker. The chaos only escalated when police arrived at the scene. They found a bloodied and enraged Travis charging at them. The officers had no choice but to shoot the animal multiple times. Even after being struck, Travis retreated into the house where he succumbed to his injuries. Inside, the scene was a nightmare. Charla Nash was barely alive, her injuries catastrophic. She was rushed to the hospital, but the damage Travis inflicted was unimaginable. Charla Nash survived, but her life was forever changed. She lost her eyes, most of her facial structure, and both hands. Surgeons performed groundbreaking procedures, including a full face transplant, to help her regain some semblance of normalcy. Her courage in the face of such trauma became an inspiration to many. Sandra Harold, devastated by the attack and its aftermath, faced severe public criticism. People questioned her decision to keep a wild animal as a pet, especially one as powerful as Travis. Sandra would later die of a heart attack in 2010, just a year after the attack, her health likely deteriorated by the immense stress and grief she endured. The tragedy of Travis the chimpanzee raised serious questions about the ownership of exotic animals. It became a turning point, leading to stricter regulations on keeping primates as pets in many states. For Charla Nash, the attack transformed her into an advocate for better laws, ensuring no one else would suffer a similar fate. The 911 call, with Sandra's desperate pleas, remains a haunting reminder of the unpredictability of wild animals, even those raised in captivity. On September 13, 2016, at 6:34 a.m., a woman known as Jane Doe made a desperate call to 911 from inside a dilapidated house in Ashland, Ohio. She had been kidnapped, bound, and held captive by a man named Sean Great for days. Remarkably, she managed to retrieve Great's phone while he slept and dialed 911. Speaking in hushed tones, she told the operator that she was in immediate danger.
911, what is the address to your emergency?
By the Fourth Street Laundromat.
What is it?
Fourth Street Laundromat.
What's the problem?
I've been abducted.
What's your name? How do you spell your last name? Who abducted you?
John Green.
Jane Doe's voice trembled, but she remained composed. She whispered, fearing that Great might wake up. The dispatcher, sensing the urgency, kept her calm while ensuring that officers were dispatched immediately. Jane Doe provided chilling details during the call. She explained that Sean Great had tied her up and that she was being held against her will. Her captor, who was sleeping in the same room, could wake at any moment, making the situation even more perilous. She mentioned she had been kidnapped several days prior and that she hadn't had the chance to escape until now. The house she described was decrepit and cluttered, filled with the stench of decay. Later, police would discover that it was a house of horrors, more than just Jane Doe's prison. It also held the remains of two women who had fallen victim to Sean Great. Officers arrived swiftly, following the address provided by Jane Doe. She stayed on the line with the dispatcher as long as possible, whispering updates about her location and situation. When police entered the home, they found Jane Doe tied to a bed. She was rescued and rushed to safety. Sean Great, awakened by the commotion, was apprehended without much resistance. The seemingly ordinary man was revealed to be a cold-blooded killer who had been operating under the radar for years. Once in custody, Sean Great confessed to the murders of multiple women. 2 bodies were found in the covert courthouse where Jane Doe was rescued. The first woman, who went by the name of Elizabeth Griffith, a 29-year-old woman with mental health struggles who had been missing for weeks. The second victim's name was Stacy Stanley, aged 43, was last seen alive after her car broke down near Great's home. Great also admitted to other murders, including 2 additional victims whose bodies were found in neighboring counties. His chilling confessions revealed a pattern of preying on vulnerable women, earning him the title of a serial killer. Sean Great's trial began in 2018, during which he showed little remorse for his crimes. The jury heard harrowing testimony, including Jane Doe's account of her captivity and abuse. In June 2018, Great was convicted on multiple counts, including aggravated murder, and was sentenced to death. He currently resides on death row in Ohio. The Sean Great case stands as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can hide behind seemingly ordinary facades. Jane Doe's bravery not only saved her own life, but also ensured justice for Great's victims. The 911 call remains a haunting yet powerful example of resilience and determination in the face of unimaginable fear. Sometime in the 1980s, a 911 dispatcher receives a call from a distressed old woman named Ruth Price. The story of Ruth Price is one that has haunted listeners for decades. A short yet terrifying 911 call captures the emotions and the terrifying ordeal Ruth had to face on that day.
This is Ruth Price of 3877.
What's the problem, ma'am?
Oh, there's some guy been checking the place out.
How?
Well, he went in the back. I have an apartment in the back, and he said he was looking for a guy. And he comes to my door, and
Yes?
said he's looking for an apartment. So I live alone, and I'm an old lady. And I'm kind of
Where is he now, ma'am?
I don't have no idea.
The call begins innocently enough. Ruth Price, an elderly woman, dials 911 to report suspicious activity. Her tone is slightly nervous but calm, suggesting that she feels uneasy but not entirely sure of what's happening. She tells the dispatcher her name and address, providing vital information in case something goes wrong. Ruth explains that she believes someone might be outside her home, and although she isn't certain, her instincts tell her something is off. There's an eerie sense of foreshadowing in her words, as though she knows something terrible is about to happen. The 911 dispatcher remains professional and focused, asking Ruth for more details about the situation. Ruth attempts to explain, but the conversation is suddenly interrupted by a noise in the background. It's faint at first, but Ruth's demeanor shifts immediately. Her nervousness turns to panic as she realizes that the danger she suspected might already be inside her home. What happens next is both horrifying and heartbreaking. In the middle of the conversation, a noise can be heard in the background, something that startles Ruth. Her calm demeanor changes instantly. She gasps, her voice trembling as she realizes that the man she was worried about may already be inside her home. Suddenly, Ruth lets out a blood-curdling scream. The terror in her voice is unmistakable. She seems to be facing something horrible, and her cry for help is heart-wrenching. The dispatcher tries to respond, but the line goes silent before anything more can be said. After Ruth's scream, the call cuts off. There's no resolution, no indication of what happened to her. This abrupt ending is what makes the call so haunting. It leaves the listener with a sense of dread and countless unanswered questions. What happened to Ruth after the call? Did anyone arrive in time to help her? For many years, people speculated that this call was a complete hoax and was just a practice call for new 911 dispatchers to practice and improve their situational thinking and response before facing actual, real-life situations. Now, it seemed like a plausible theory at first, but after doing a bit of research, the tragic call of Ruth Price had actually already been solved. It was a real case in the 1980s, and she was an old woman who suspected a man outside her door. He got inside during the call and tried to strangle her, but thankfully, she scared off the man and lived for more than a decade after the incident. This whole incident serves as a tragic reminder of how quickly danger can escalate and how vulnerable we can be in moments of crisis.